Now, one of them will break that, as one of these two will be the champion of the first round of Golden League 2. It is LucifroN versus VortiX as we jump into the pit with Delhi against the Chinese.
And as you said, the curse so far, not been able to win a round, either one of them, but already they'll break it and leave 2 rounds for the other bro to maybe pick up the slack. But we start off here. Round 1, best of 7 between VortiX and LucifroN. No walls, no keeps, no pesky stone towers. And on a map like Pit, that's not what you want to hit. If you're that type of player that likes Pit, you probably like walling yourself up. But instead, expect a lot of aggression as Chinese on the side of VortiX and LucifroN going with the Delhi. The question mark is whether we get a lot of forced feudal pressure or if this is going to be one of those more innovative Delhi Castle Age builds.
I'm very curious to see these two players play this because, as you said, they are scrimming partners. They know each other inside out. Then again, their playstyles also differ somewhat. As you said, VortiX is more focused on taking those critical engagements and having a really good understanding of what fights he can and what fights he cannot take. Whereas for LucifroN, he's more about that slower escalation. He's more about that strategically dragging out the game to a point to build up an advantage. And as you said, based on this, and based on the fact that these two have played out the winners finals and that was won by LucifroN, we think that LucifroN probably has the edge in this.
Yeah, it's, you know what it is? It's basically, it's normal punch versus death by 1,000 cuts, right? That's the way I like to think about it. LucifroN's going to try to wear you down, probe for assaults, eke out an advantage. VortiX quite often is this player that will just reach a point where he'll just scream Falcon Punch at the top of his voice, and he either completely whiffs and loses, or he just destroys his opponent. In these type of like Civ matchups on a map like Pit, I think you could head for that. Like Chinese are kind of unpredictable in these kind of environments because you expect for them to eco boom, but with the rising surge of popularity of the Chuge Nu, there is variance play to them, right? They can also go for that Castle Age rush build we've seen growing in popularity for the Chinese.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily be against that if you think about it, because if you especially have a slower escalation from the Delhi player, with the Dome of Fate coming in as... Oh, there is the Tower of Victory. So quick change of landmarks here for LucifroN, but we'll talk about that in a second. So if there's a slower escalation for LucifroN when it comes to Feudal Age army, then you could justify going Castle for VortiX and try to go Palace Guards to try and combat what LucifroN puts on the table with the Feudal Age of the Delhi.
Yeah, and the interesting part is by going for TOV, LucifroN doesn't have that Castle Age unlock as fast either. If he does go for it, he's going to be going into it weaker because he'll have to get certain tech upgrades, but the forfeit of going for a faster castle is less scholars, right? Literally the difference of Dome of Fate versus TOV is a 50% discount on scholars. That's an insane savings you get. Not to mention the fact that the most recent patch, that Dome of Faith also became a mosque.
Yeah, now the thing I think that's most relevant with that is that, as you said, less scholars you have access to. So the time it takes to get sanctity for you and start capping those sacred sites will also be a little longer than what you would have with Dome of Faith. And that is exactly what helps VortiX over here, because you don't want Delhi to capture those sacred sites early and get that big influx of resources to start flooding you with units in Feudal.
I mean, it's even slower than you first realize, right? Because of the fact that the Dome of Faith is a mosque, most players will build a mosque still because you get a free scholar. So it's actually like an even exchange. Instead of 150 gold, you pay 150 wood. And then you keep pumping new scholars out the Dome of Faith and continue researching in the mosque. It's an insane advantage that the Delhi didn't have before. I was baffled by the fact it actually got buffed. I mean, I know TOV was rising in popularity, but with all the other changes, you know, you add that all together, there's a reason why a lot of people are saying Delhi need to be nerfed.
Exactly. Now, part of that strength we won't see in this setup, because in this first stage, you're not allowed to build keeps or stone walls. So one of the biggest buffs that have happened to the Delhi, that is the buff to village fortresses, is not available to be used in this stage. But starting next week, where stone walls and keeps are once again available, you could see even more of that Delhi power shine.
So what you're saying is we should give a really big shout out to EGC for giving us a format at the start of the patch that meant that we didn't have to waste a ban in every series on Delhi. Big shout out EGC. Boom. There we go. I'll tell you, that's how it would have been, Lidakor. Like, honestly, like, I don't think anyone is delusional enough. All the players I've talked to, they all agree. The Delhi, they got juiced, all right? They all of a sudden became Superman. even though they were already Batman.
Exactly. Their early game was always a strength. There was insane momentum, there was a flood of units, but suddenly you can justify committing to a 1TC build like that low eco quote-unquote approach of the Delhi even more, because the moment you get to Castle Age, you can catch up in villager count no matter what your opponent was doing.
I just realized by saying Superman, Batman, and saying one's better, I probably started a whole argument in the chat, so oops. But, you know, we'll have to see how supercharged they can be. Lucifron is going to be going into the Horseman plus the archery range. I think this is the more comfortable way of seeing this opening. Like, some players go archery range first to get the TOV value immediately. But I just think, you know, 2 or 3 Horsemen first compared to 2 or 3 Archers, it's not even close the value you get out of one compared to the other.
Exactly. Now, I love the Barbican in the middle, because this does so many things. First of all, it actually gives you vision on the shortest path between the 2 players. So VortiX will always see units or even armies coming his way. But I think the more important detail is that whenever you play these sacred sites with the Delhi, you probably will be able to control the 2 that are close to each other. Controlling all 3 is a bit of a challenge here. So by placing that Barbican in the middle, you kind of cut off the sacred sites out there, and Lucifer might be forced to just cap the 2 side sacred sites, and holding both of those at the same time might actually be a challenge.
It's actually even worse than that. Like, think about the way the pit spawns and where the gold's located. Like, long term, this Barbican secures a vital resource rather, if this game goes past 30-35 minutes for VortiX.
Yep. And don't forget that we don't have access to keeps over there. So while the Barbican doesn't have a tremendous amount of firepower there in the middle, it's still a 5,000 HP landmark with great line of sight, some firepower, and it's a great place to be a staging ground for your forces. And as you said, it could easily be a tool to deny gold with for the game once we get to, like, let's say the 15, 20, 25 minute mark.
Yeah, and, you know, in that late game, there's definitely plenty of comps the Chinese want to utilize the gold for, right? Maybe you want to go hand cannoneers, maybe you need a lot of siege. Obviously, the Delhi can still flirt with the idea of getting gold off of the sacred sites, but it kind of shies in comparison at the late phase of the game. Sure, an hour plus in, the Delhi will have infinite gold, and the Chinese might not, but I gotta highlight the issue with being an hour into the game and picking the Delhi. It's rare that you ever see that for very good reasons.
Yeah, Archer's out here trying to get some walls up, but numbers seem a little insufficient here for Lucifron, and the walls won't be completed. You could see the Scholar also being pulled to try and cap the sacred site, but so far, VortiX is doing a really good job slowing this down, exactly what he needs here at the beginning, although villagers finding a weird path over here will get intercepted.
The Chiganu, they do a notable amount more damage per unit up against Horsemen, right? Like, the fact that you've got this ranged armor counts for squat when you consider the Chiganu's damage can only be reduced to 1, and they attack 3 times, which is why, even against TOV archers, it's not even a fair fight.
Also, you can supervise your production buildings, don't forget that. So getting those units out here is actually a little easier for the Chinese right now. That's part of the reason why you actually see a numerical advantage here on the battlefield. Although technically, the numbers advantage should be on the side of Lucifron based on the overall stats.
I love the way Lucy snaked that as well. Like, just staying on the sacred site long enough and pulling back, and then injured units you can potentially heal. But now, once again, the Clash. Nice snipe out there. Very important to just take that vision away, especially when VortiX is playing with a static comp like this. Also, remember, it wasn't VortiX walling this off. It's Lucy. So now you can have flank options if need be, but instead a hard commitment to wipe out the Chugenu, and VortiX with not enough spearmen is going to lose the entire army.
Exactly. It was 2-to-1 army value from Lucifer at the beginning of that fight, and he realized that, caught up with the Horsemen, and look at that. Just an instant GG by VortiX, loses the army, gives up the game. Such a quick strike here by Lucifron, dispatches VortiX in game number 1 in less than 10 minutes.
Doesn't want to wait, right? It's like, no, let's make this a quick one. Let me just get that title, that dub. We're going to repeat last weekend, bro. But I mean, honestly, like the way this is played out is phenomenally well done by LucifroN. Like, he measures his aggression to get exploitative elements such as a sacred site cap. It's just slowly eking him ahead. That whole idea of raiding, although we didn't fully see it here, we saw it in the way that he takes fights. He will wait until he has a clear and dominant lead to commit entirely. And at that stage, we talked about VortiX. He's the type of player that wants to be in that all-in situation. He's not content being on the defensive. And the other thing you have to keep in mind, you know, these guys, they play together constantly. They've played this type of scenario out many more times against each other's playstyle than any other player, so they will know when to call it an earlier phase. What I'm getting at is expect this to be more of a norm where we see these very quick games between these two than these 1% comeback chance games where someone hangs around for an extra 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's a great point. As you said, these two being practice partners, they know each other's playstyles fully well, and they have a pretty good understanding of what situations they have to tap out, knowing their opponents so well. So, as you said, it's very possible we are seeing some very quick games because once one player falls behind, he knows fully well that, okay, this is a scenario that I will lose 99 times out of 100, so might as well just give it up over here. And as you said, quick strike here by LucifroN as we head to the first mirror of the set. It is going to be an English mirror here on